If you wanted to destroy a great and powerful civilization that values freedom, what would be the best way to do it? Divide the nation? We've all heard that a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. What contemporary movement in Western civilization is the epitome of division? Social justice? The phrase social justice on its face sounds like a great thing. Justice for society, equality for all. Who wouldn't want that, right? Isn't that what we say in our Pledge of Allegiance? With liberty and justice for all. The problem, however, lies in who defines what justice is and what should be done in order to bring it about. When we consider those things, we quickly see that social justice is anything but just. It's a disease. It's cancer. It divides. It conquers.
When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean?
Listen to this former KGB
To
agent.
change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
You mean like calling us all
It's a
racist?
great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in four basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism.
We see that today in our universities.
The result you can see, most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern.
Can you say
You
social
cannot
justice
change their
warrior?
mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior.
For example,
It's time we stop saying white privilege and start saying white supremacy.
I was really nervous to get up here because there's a lot of white people in the crowd. And that wasn't a joke.
All white people are racist.
hey, at least she's honest and modestly dressed.
Any white person in the room to know up front that this is what we're dealing with, that it's not going to be this coddling of white tears and what that looks like. We're not going to discuss, oh, maybe some of us have worked it out. No, you're always going to be racist, actually.
That's a pretty moderate
You're on your
opinion.
path to trying to figure out how to be a better human being, because I believe that white people are born into not being human. Like that actually, instead of people of color and black folks being dehumanized, that actually everyone is dehumanized off rip within white supremacy, that y'all are born into a life to not be human, and that's what y'all are taught to do, to be demons.
Wow, that's a
So,
pretty
in this
objective
particular
statement.
way, white people are all racist. So I just want y'all to know that up front.
So today is a kickoff for our Whiteness History Month at Portland Community College, and this is the first event that we're having at the Southeast Campus.
Right, but what is whiteness? How do you define it?
So it's not based on race.
Yeah, right.
It's a social organizational construct. So it's really a way to look at how whiteness has oppressed everybody, not just people of color, and it makes us look at how we interact with each other and how we support each other and our differences. And the session that we're doing today is looking at unconscious bias.
We constantly hear that white people are racist and that black people are incapable of racism. Social justice as a movement promotes its insidious agenda under the guise of equality and tolerance, when in reality it promotes inequality and intolerance. Its true purpose is to divide and conquer. It divides groups of people based on identities. It identifies groups of people who are deemed as the oppressors and other groups as the oppressed. It decides who are the privileged in our society and who are the underprivileged. Let's take a look at some of the crazy notions being taught today.
And this is David here, so you can follow along. I'm going to read you about his hierarchical profile here. David, who works as a landscaper on the grounds of a manufacturing plant, is lower in the company hierarchy than people who work on the production lines. But he is higher than people who are custodians. David is male and Asian American, so David is higher on the gender hierarchy than his female co-workers, and is lower on the race hierarchy than his white co-workers. Since David is bald, tall, and slender, he feels lower than men with thick heads of hair, but feels higher than men who are either shorter or heavier than today's hierarchical interpretation of desirable man.
Is this a joke?
David has use of 10 fingers, so he's higher on the body hierarchy than his cousin born with 3 fewer fingers on one hand than on his other hand. David chose his apartment carefully because David and his partner Frank are low on the sexual orientation hierarchy. Frank grew up in England, so his accent places him higher on the immigrant hierarchy than their neighbor from Mexico. David also participates in a religious hierarchy in which he is lower than the clergy, but higher than people not of his faith.
This self-professed stupid woman is a Colombian-Canadian singer. Her name is Lido Pimienta, and during a concert, she asked audience members of color to move to the front, and she asked whites to move to the back. Several white people refused to go to the back, and one volunteer who was a photographer refused to budge and was kicked out of the concert. The organization that put on the event ended up apologizing to the singer. They said, "We will not accept this behavior, and neither should you." They were referring to the behavior of the white person.
You're saying that I can't have a hairstyle because of your culture? Why?
Because it's my culture.
You know what, girl? Dude, go. You have no right to tell me what I can not wear.
The female is a San Francisco State University employee.
Yo, girl, stop touching me right now.
Yo, girl, stop touching me right now.
Come back. Get off of me.
Come back, come back, come back.
You stole my property, my Make America Great Again hat.
Look at the kind of shit he's wearing. Look at. Hey, y'all. So this guy thought it would be a good idea to go into the conference
With my
wearing this
freedom of
fucking
speech,
hat.
with my freedom of speech, she took my hat.
Wearing this
belongs
hat.
to me.
Look at the kind of shit he's wearing.
I understand.
You know what this represents? This represents genocide.
I understand.
Genocide of a bunch of people. And look at what he's wearing.
I agree. Genocide is a very bad thing.
To say that the Black Lives Matter movement is racist is bizarre to me. Not just because black people don't have the institutional power to be racist or to deploy racism, but because the movement is called for justice. It's called for demilitarization. It's called for nonviolence.
Bacon, fry like bacon, pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon, pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon.
Facebook has the ability to censor certain images that depict violence. However, after several famous football players posted this image of a man dressed in black slitting the throat of a police officer, Facebook chose not to take this image down, despite the many complaints.
So we're sitting here telling you that you are being racist, you are being offensive, you admitted that you hurt us. Why can't you say sorry?
This is what happens when a professor doesn't react exactly the way that the students demand.
It is no longer a safe space for me.
No, I don't agree with that.
Then why the fuck did you accept the position?
Because
Who
I have
the
a
fuck hired you?
I have a different
You
vision
should
than you.
step down. If that is what you think about being a semester, you should step down.
These are students at Berkeley who form a wall to stop people who are not of color from passing through.
Difference between debate and dialectic. Debate, wait a second. No, it is. Debate means you are trying to win. Dialectic means you are using disagreement to discover what is true. I am not interested in debate. I am interested only in dialectic, which does mean I listen to you and you listen to me.
This is former Evergreen State College professor Brett Weinstein.
What terms you want to speak on? This is not about you.
I'm talking
about
all about him.
On terms of white privilege. This is not a discussion.
These are the same snowflakes that demand safe spaces for themselves.
Hey, hey, ho, ho. These racist teachers have got to go.
But no, they fear from us. They fear of us trying to mace us in the eyes and shit. For what? For us saying like, hey, Brett, you need to apologize? For one fucking white guy?
Is there any black folks that need water in here?
Why is it all these black women and femmes doing all this emotional labor in this space? These white-ass faculty members need to be holding him and all these people accountable. We don't need to be doing...
Referring to your professors as white-ass faculty isn't racist at all, is it?
That's not appropriate. You gotta put your hands out.
They're ordering the Evergreen State College president to put his hands
Your
down.
ancestors came here of free choice and decided to bring along my people not of their own free will to work and build this country. Okay, and so I'm just letting you know that slavery still has repercussions in society today, and that is what we're here about. Those repercussions. It doesn't go away. It's not over.
This is an interview with Brett Weinstein.
That interchange that you saw was very tense,
Yeah.
but it got far worse very quickly. By the end of the day, it was anarchy on our campus. People were, including me, were literally being stalked and hunted. I'm receiving text messages from students elsewhere in the room telling me there's talk that I won't be allowed to leave. She stands up in this room.
There was literally talk of you being kidnapped or something.
This is Dave Rubin.
There's been some crazy stuff here. Yeah.
There was talk of my being kidnapped. I got a text message from another student who told me that she overheard a conversation that people should keep mace hidden. So this was a very dangerous situation. It's preposterous. And I should say that the same faculty member has accused me of racism once very directly in a faculty meeting, and then implicitly in another faculty meeting she said that the negative reaction to the equity proposal that had been advanced was a racist backlash. In this faculty meeting, when she said that, with the president of the college and the provost sitting right there, I said, you know, somebody at some point should check on the question of whether or not I actually am a racist. I think you might be very surprised.
Yeah.
I was then told by the chair of the faculty that this was not the place to defend myself.
That's because he's an evil white man pig.
And then Naima spoke up and said, you shouldn't expect a venue in which to defend yourself. The president and provost sat perfectly silently through this interaction. Well, the police, in fact, told me on Wednesday, that day after the protest at my class, they told me, they called me and said, are you on campus? I said, no. They said, don't come to campus. The protesters are searching car to car and asking for identifying information of the occupants. They're looking for what they say is an individual, and we think it's you. I honestly cannot believe it. The number of things that I have seen that I thought, well, now they have to act, and then they have failed to do so, is unreal. And the fact, I mean, George Bridges, our president, continues to capitulate to demands that are leveled by these protesters when it is explicitly said if these demands aren't met, there will be violence.
There's a ridiculous belief that is promoted in our society that there's a special group of people called Hispanics or Latinos, and that they are a special race.
I mean, you don't look like you're from there. You know what I'm saying?
Latinos or Hispanics can be of any race, including white.
So where are your parents from?
So, you're like a Latina from Spain?
No, like from South America.
And that is where?
Seriously, how many people look like you where you're from?
This BuzzFeed video acts as if there aren't any white Latinos.
My nanny was white, so I totally get it. Like, I feel like I'm part white because of my nanny.
You're actually white because of your European ancestry.
Pero.
Perro.
Pero.
Is it more of a Spanish R roll, like a tongue roll?
Perro. I'm white and I could say it.
I can't do that.
The Census Bureau recognizes that Hispanic and Latino are not terms that refer to race. A person is Hispanic or Latino if he identifies as such. In fact, they even say, I was born in Maryland and married an immigrant from El Salvador. Am I Hispanic? Their answer, you are, if you say you are.
You have posited yourself as the leader of Latinos, and I'm not exactly sure what that word means. So Latinos seem to encompass, I don't know, German Guatemalans and Italian Argentines and Afro-Cubans and non-Spanish speaking Peruvians and, I don't know, blue-eyed rich Mexicans like you. What do those groups have in common exactly?
Many have nothing in common.
Well, what we have in common is that mostly that we come from a region in the world, Latin America. And there are many differences. Many people call them Latinos, many people call them Hispanics. We tend to speak more Spanish at home.
If I am a non-Spanish speaking Brazilian, I speak Portuguese, I'm a non-Spanish speaking Peruvian, I'm 100% German, but I live in Guatemala, and there are a lot of them there, as you know. There are also a lot of 100% Italian people in Argentina. There are a lot of African Latin American Cubans. What do they have in common? A lot of them don't like each other. They don't speak the same language. They have very different cultures.
Hispanics or Latinos can be of any race. They might be brown-skinned. They may have indigenous ancestors. There are Hispanics who are black and of African ancestry. You can even be an Asian Hispanic and former president of Peru. Guess where these two white people are from? Mexico. As mentioned previously, the Pope is of European descent, but is Hispanic. On the right is Ted Cruz's father, who is a white Cuban. Many people with ancestors from Spanish-speaking countries are actually white and of European descent. Nonetheless, they are still Hispanic. Hispanic is not a race. It might surprise you to find out that these two white actors are actually Hispanic. They have ancestors from Spanish-speaking countries. Spanish-speaking countries, just like the United States, have immigrants who come from many different countries, yet these immigrants are still considered Hispanic. All these women have ancestors also from Spanish-speaking countries. The terms Hispanic and Latino do not refer to race, rather geography, culture, and language. However, many Hispanics and Latinos do not speak Spanish, nor do they practice the culture of their ancestors. Here in the United States, Hispanics and Latinos are considered a minority group. Here is one definition of a minority group: a subordinate group whose members have significantly less control or power over their lives than members of a dominant or majority group. So all of these Hispanic people have less control over their lives just because they had ancestors from Spanish-speaking countries? An Oregon school offered an after-school drum class for black and Hispanic boys. Did the Hispanic boys have to be brown-skinned? Did they have to be Spanish-speaking? What if they had blonde hair and blue eyes?
Remember that Drexel professor who wanted a white genocide for Christmas? I hate even saying that. Well, he's back, and he's now blaming whiteness for the Texas church shooting.
Whiteness is a structure of privilege, and it's a structure of power, and it's a structure that when it feels threatened, lashes out.
I think he's applying his ideological formula to a very complex problem. And it's an easy thing to do. It's this sort of postmodern formula that's taught to university students everywhere now.
What is the formula?
Attribute everything to racial disparity and oppression, victimization. With the Marxist theory, it was rich against poor, bourgeoisie against proletariat, and that was recast in the 1970s as oppression due to group identity, essentially, and so that's where identity politics came from. It's a formula you can learn in about a day, and then you can use it to explain everything.
This is exactly what we see in social justice.
And so with the rise of postmodernism, that's a huge factor. That was a French intellectual school that was a transformation of Marxism into identity politics, essentially. And because it's, I think in some sense, because it requires almost no intellectual effort and leaves you with an overwhelming sense of moral superiority, they're basically teaching young people, I would say, to be ideological avatars, to go act out this pernicious doctrine. Well, it's a form of justification for the use of power. You know, if you're a victim and you can ascribe moral superiority to yourself, then you're justified in the use of force. And Hitler claimed that the Jews were victimizing Germany, essentially. And so once you're a victim and you have all the moral status that goes along with being a victim, then you can't do any wrong, essentially.
All white people are racist.
Black people don't have the institutional power to be racist or to deploy racism.
There was a recent op-ed that came out in the New York Times entitled, "Can My Children Be Friends with White People?" The author said, Donald Trump's election made it clear that I will teach my boys the lesson generations old, one that I, for the most part, nearly escaped. I will teach them to be cautious. I will teach them suspicion, and I will teach them distrust. Much sooner than I thought I would. I will have to discuss with my boys whether they can truly be friends with white people. Maybe the writer of this article should worry more about his own proclivity to judge people based on the color of their skin instead of the content of their character, and should refrain from passing these racist beliefs on to his children.
We cannot smash voices down when they are trying to scream, "Listen to me, you don't get it."
No, I don't agree with that.
Then why the fuck did you accept the position?
Because
Who
I have
the fuck hired you?
I have a different
You
vision
should
than you.
step down. If that is what you think about being a pastor, you should step down. Ho ho! These racist teachers have got to go. Hey hey! Ho ho! These racist teachers have got to go. Hey hey!
I'm a white woman. I don't get it. I am pleased and honored to be here today to have the conversation. I am so excited that we're here. And I am listening because that's my job. My job is to listen to the issues. My job is to listen and be a voice. And my job is to shut other white people down when they want to interrupt. My job is to shut other white people down when they want to say, "Oh no, I'm not prejudiced."
It's preposterous. And I should say that the same faculty member has accused me of racism once very directly in a faculty meeting, and then implicitly in another faculty meeting she said that the negative reaction to the equity proposal that had been advanced was a racist backlash. In this faculty meeting, when she said that, with the president of the college and the provost sitting right there, I said, you know, somebody at some point should check on the question of whether or not I actually am a racist. I think you might be very surprised.
Yeah.
I was then told by the chair of the faculty that this was not the place to defend myself, and I said, that's fine. Where is the place to defend myself? And then Naima spoke up and said, you shouldn't expect a venue in which to defend yourself. The president and provost sat perfectly silently through this interaction.
Hey, we are racing for a $100 bill. The winner of this race will take this. It's a $100 bill. I'm going to make a couple statements. If those statements apply to you, I want you to take 2 steps forward. Take 2 steps forward if both of your parents are still married.
You know how this is going to turn out.
Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with a father figure in the home.
According to this, only white people have married parents and father figures in the
Take 2
home.
steps forward if you had access to a private education.
The rest of the questions are going to be about money.
Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a free tutor growing up. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to worry about your cell phone being shut off.
Can you say propaganda?
Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to help mom or dad with the bills.
Why didn't they find any rich black kids for this video?
Take 2 steps forward if it wasn't because of your athletic ability. You don't have to pay for college.
I wonder what he's referring to.
Take 2 steps forward if you never wondered where your next meal was going to come from.
Did you notice that they omitted an entire race?
I want you guys up here in the front just to turn around and look. Every statement I've made has nothing to do with anything any of you have done. Has nothing to do with decisions you've made. Everything I have said has nothing to do with what you've done. We all know these people up here have a better opportunity to win this $100.
They want us to believe that all of the people in front are white and all the white people are privileged. But did you notice which race they left out? Asians. This was obviously intentional because Asians throw off their entire narrative. Asians have a larger income than whites. They also have more degrees than whites. In this video, they also asked about having a father figure in the home and whether the kids' parents were still together. Again, Asians have the lowest divorce rate in the United States. This video has been shared and viewed by so many people. Many say that it is the perfect depiction of how our society stacks the deck against certain people, namely people of color. The only problem is, this video is just propaganda. It's a farce. Only people who blindly watch without applying any critical thinking skills will see it as proof of the hierarchy that we learned earlier.
Does that mean these people back here can't race? No. We would be foolish to not realize we've been given more opportunity. We don't want to recognize that we've been given a head start.
According to their criteria, everyone in front should be Asian.
Now, there's no excuse. They still got to run their race. You still got to run your race. But whoever wins this $100, I think it'd be extremely foolish of you not to utilize that and learn more about somebody else's story. Because the reality is, if this was a fair race and everybody was back on that line, I guarantee you some of these black dudes would smoke all of you.
Wow, that's a racist statement.
Only because you have this big of a head start that you're possibly going to win this race called life.
This fixation on race, privilege, and hierarchy has permeated our society. An article in the LA Times revealed that a Princeton University study showed how race and ethnicity affect admissions by using SAT scores as a benchmark. It uses the term bonus to describe how many extra SAT points an applicant's race is worth. Blacks received 230 extra points. Hispanics, 185 extra points. Asians were deducted 50 points, and whites received 0 extra points. Needless to say, Asians were not happy. Did you notice that people were given or deducted points based on their race? Black, Asian, white? But Hispanic's not a race. A Hispanic could be any race. These points went to people who identified as Hispanic regardless of their race. Hispanic is an ethnic identity. Why are we giving extra points to people just because of an ethnic identity? Did Muslims get extra points? Did Jews get extra points? Did Slavic people get extra points? What's even worse is that Asians were deducted 50 points. I suggest that instead of identifying as Asian, Asians should identify as Hispanic. Hispanic is merely an identity. Instead of getting deducted 50 points, they would end up getting an extra 185 points, which means they would actually have 235 more points if they identified as Hispanic. A New York Times article revealed that many Asians are frustrated because they are receiving unjust treatment based on their race. The article went on to say that certain Asian students are now the subject of a lawsuit accusing Harvard of discriminating against Asian Americans in admissions by imposing a penalty for their high achievement and giving preferences to other racial minorities, or certain ethnic identity groups, such as Hispanics, who may or may not be racial minorities. The man on the left is named Dinesh D'Souza. He's a brown-skinned person, and he is considered a racial minority here in the United States. The person on the right is named Cameron Diaz. She's white, and she would be considered by many to have white privilege. Nonetheless, the person on the left, the brown-skinned person, would be deducted 50 points on the SAT score because of the fact that he is Asian, and the person on the right, the white person, would receive an extra 185 points because she is ethnically considered Hispanic.
You were studying statistics at the University of Chicago, and you say to yourself, I don't stand a chance with my 3.1. What did you do?
Well, I shaved my head, I trimmed my eyelashes, and I decided to join the organization of black students so I could apply to medical school as a black man. I also used my middle name, Jojo. I subsequently interviewed at medical schools across the country, and managed to get waitlisted at Washington University and the University of Pennsylvania, then ranked the second and the third and fourth best medical schools in the country, and got into St. Louis University School of Medicine, despite the fact that my pretty pitiful 3.1 GPA was dramatically lower than their average of 3.7. The simple point is that as an Asian American, it is harder to get into college or graduate school than any other racial category. In every place where the data is available, it is consistently harder for an Asian American to get in. I used the example earlier of medical school admissions, where it was 50% easier to get into medical school as an Asian American compared to an African American. So statistical data, there is no rationalization for racism. Affirmative action is a system of legalized racism.
Amen.
It is a racial classification system that changes people's chances of admission to college or graduate school, and there is no justification for it.
It would be unheard of to do a video about social justice without talking about the LGBTQIA community.
In January, transgender athlete Tia Thompson was approved by USA Volleyball to compete as a woman. Before that, she was required to play in the men's division at all USAV sanctioned events. Thompson and her supporters hope her story will inspire other Hawaii trans athletes, but many in the local volleyball community say it's simply an unfair advantage.
USAV requires transgender women to undergo hormone replacement therapy consistently for at least 1 year with proper documentation, and they also have to change their identification, like passports and birth certificates, to female.
In what's becoming a dilemma for international sport, a transgender weightlifter has won the Australian female title. Under Olympic rules, New Zealander Laurel Hubbard is considered a woman, but officials say it's unfair for her to compete against females.
Laurel Hubbard creating history.
From New Zealand, Laurel Hubbard.
The first transgender person to compete in an international weightlifting event. She won the over 90 kilogram event here easily. But in such a power sport, growing up male is beneficial.
As a male, you get benefits, with muscularity and probably psychologically as well. You could say that she's an advantage over other females in the event.
And that's why Commonwealth gold and silver medalist Deb Ackerson says it's simply not fair to female competitors.
It needs to be an even playing field, and that's the #1 stipulation of the IOC, is that all athletes compete on an even playing field.
Does anyone else see how crazy and dangerous this is? We have a man competing with women in a sport. Not only that, but in Olympic sports, men will be able to compete against women. It's even possible that we'll see entire teams of men competing as women. I could see China and Russia having their male athletes, undergo sex changes just so that they could win gold medals.
Meanwhile, Thompson says she plans on trying out for the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo, and she hopes that will give her a platform to support other trans athletes while educating others.
By me coming out and opening the doors, it will get more accepted.
Ashley Nagaoka, Hawaii News Now.
Here is perhaps one of the most compelling arguments against men competing in sports against women. On the left, we see a man. On the right, we see the same man who took female hormones and chopped off his penis. This person is an MMA or mixed martial arts fighter. They get paid to beat up other women.
It was insulting that she didn't let us know initially, and I have already expressed my feelings about that.
I think the solution is education on the subject. I'm doing a lot of speaking engagements, so I'm getting a lot of airtime, and a lot of people are hearing about transgender people, and it's just very, very positive.
The fight you just saw was between Tamika Brents, a biological female whose photo you see here, and also Fallon Fox, a biological male. Fallon sent Tamika Brent to the hospital where she received treatment for a concussion, a broken orbital bone, and received 7 staples in her head. The fight lasted less than 3 minutes. Tamika Brent said during an interview, "I've fought a lot of women, and I've never felt the strength that I felt in a fight as I did that night. I can't answer whether it's because she was born a man or not, because I'm not a doctor. I can only say I've never felt so overpowered ever in my life, and I'm an abnormally strong female in my own right," she stated. Her grip was different. "I could usually move around in the clinch against other females, but couldn't move at all in Fox's clinch."
A number of Californians are identified as non-binary, not male, not female, and now they're pushing a bill that would place a third gender option on state documents.
The bill is now law.
California's lawmakers are chopping up their state's criminal code to keep up with rapidly shifting values that are changing so fast it is bewildering. The state used to fear people deliberately spreading HIV, which remains a chronic, incurable, and ultimately terminal virus. No more, under a new law taking effect next year, deliberately spreading HIV, doing it on purpose, knowing that you're doing it, is now in California a misdemeanor with a maximum punishment of 6 months in jail. Meanwhile, there are terrible new crimes in California, and the most terrible of all, misgendering someone. Also starting next year, healthcare workers who persistently use the wrong pronouns when working with seniors could be imprisoned for up to a year.
So much for free speech.
Getting ready for work. A meticulous process that involves shaving, glitter, hairspray, and a wig.
Eee.
But instead of performing at a nightclub,
hi, hello, and
the venue is the Brooklyn Public Library in Park Slope.
Gotta start 'em young.
who wants to be a drag queen when they grow up?
Little Miss Hot Mess,
Who is ready for a story?
is the host of Drag Queen Story Hour.
This one is called Worm Loves Worm. We can both be grooms.
To an audience of preschoolers, toddlers, and their caregivers.
The hips on the drag queen go swish, 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 swish.
Please don't
swish.
do that.
The library started scheduling Drag Queen Story Hour last year.
You know, that's what I'm looking for in all of our outings, is to present different ways of being in the world and make that fun.
Make mental illness fun.
It's okay. Welcome to Queer Kid Stuff. I'm Lindsay, and this is my best friend Teddy. Today, we're going to talk about what LGBT stands for.
Yay! This looks fun and informative. Gay means happy. Queer kid stuff.
You are enough.
Yes, you are.
Here at Queer Kid Stuff.
Yeah, baby.
Today, we're talking about the first letter, L. L stands for lesbian. The word lesbian is similar to the word gay, which we talked about in the very first episode of Queer Kid Stuff. A lesbian is a girl who loves other girls.
Sexually.
We've learned so much this year, and you've gotten so good at all this queer kid stuff.
And brainwashed.
That I think you should take the lead on this episode.
A long, long time ago, the word gay meant happy.
Like when I'm eating ice cream, that makes me feel happy and gay.
Yeah, I feel happy and gay when I'm with you doing queer kid stuff.
I hope there's another adult present.
Gay means when one person of one gender loves someone romantically who is the same gender. So, if a boy loves a boy, they're gay. And if a girl loves a girl, they're gay too.
What if a person loves a person?
They could be gay too. The word gay has everything to do with love.
T stands for trans or transgender.
Ooh, that's a cool new word.
Definitely, Teddy. The very first thing doctors tell you when a new baby is born. They tell parents that their baby is a boy or a girl. That's called a gender assignment.
That's called biology.
There's something a bit weird about how doctors assign gender to babies. That's because there aren't only boys and girls, and because not all people identify with their assigned gender.
Oh, so the doctors are wrong sometimes?
Yes, Teddy. Sometimes doctors don't assign the right genders.
Like mistakenly calling a baby with a penis a boy.
It's June, Teddy.
Yeah, June. What's so special about June, Lindsay?
Well, it's LGBTQ plus Pride Month, Teddy.
You stupid teddy
Pride
bear.
Month has to do with something called the gay rights movement and activism.
Hey. Hey. I am so excited for your party this weekend. You know my friend Allie, right? Do you mind if I invite them?
Yeah, of course not. Invite her. She's cool.
Allie uses they pronouns, not she.
Just like some people use he or she pronouns, some people use they pronouns. Why? Because they may not identify within the traditional gender categories of boy or girl. So when you use the wrong pronoun, you're misgendering someone. You messed up.
Allie uses they pronouns, not she.
What?
Allie is transgender and doesn't identify as a boy or a girl, so they use gender-neutral pronouns.
Wait, what do you mean they pronouns? Isn't they plural? What does that even mean? That's not grammatically correct.
They can be plural, and they can be singular. Policing someone's identity with grammar comes across as snobby and disrespectful. Also, language changes all the time. Just like when someone says they're gay, they probably don't mean that they're happy.
Allie uses they pronouns, not she.
Oh yeah, I forgot she goes by them.
No, Allie goes by them. They go by them.
Whoa, would you just chill? I made one mistake. Why are you freaking out?
Whoa there! Defensiveness much? This person has a right to be upset. They're trying to help you be more respectful. They may not be doing it in a way that you like. Yeah, learning can be uncomfortable and difficult, and that's okay. It's gonna take some effort to learn about trans identities. Don't be a defensive jerk about it. Just be a good
It
sport.
takes a while to be brainwashed. Just go
Allie
with it.
uses they pronouns, not she.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to use the wrong pronoun. What is wrong with me today? It's just not my day. I swear I'm a good ally. I promise.
You need to go back to the re-education camp.
Look, apologizing for something you did wrong is great, but apologizing excessively can just make it worse. You just hurt someone, so it's not all about you.
It's all about the narcissistic mentally ill person.
Also, you don't get to decide if you're a good ally or not. Trans people do. It's a good thing I have this umbrella for all the tears.
Liberal tears?
Allie uses they pronouns, not she.
Wait, what? Is Allie trans? Oh my god, that is so cool. I couldn't tell. You know, I heard using they pronouns is the latest trend. Oh, they are so progressive, breaking all those fashion rules. I love Caitlyn Jenner. She's the best out of all the Kardashians. Oh, and RuPaul.
Acceptance is great. Stereotypes are not.
Like calling all white people
who use they
racists?
pronouns aren't here to make you feel more cool. They aren't fashion accessories. They're people.
Who have a mental illness.
Allie uses they pronouns, not she.
Look, I just don't think that women should refer to themselves as gender neutral or they or whatever. In this patriarchal, misogynistic society, women are so oppressed and we're raised to hate femininity. I just think that women who call themselves they are rejecting their womanhood.
No hate truth.
Okay, firstly, Allie is not a woman. Secondly, they know themselves better than you do despite how much theory you've read. Women are great. Feminism is great too, it just needs to include trans people.
Transracial? Transspecies?
Allie uses they pronouns, not she.
Oh, sorry, I meant let's invite them.
Okay, great. We'll see you Saturday.
Finally, total compliance.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my identity. I hope that talking about my identity with you can help you figure out some things about your identity. I've talked about my identity before, like how I identify as queer and as white and as Jewish and as a cisgender woman.
And a Marxist social justice warrior.
I actually wanted to talk about that last one, my gender. Up until now, I've always identified as being a cisgender woman who uses she pronouns. But recently, I've actually been questioning this part of my identity.
Tell us more.
I'm not totally sure anymore if I'm a cisgender woman. This is something I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I'm still kind of figuring it out.
So glad you're teaching our children.
And I wanted to share that with you. I'm starting to use she and they pronouns with my friends and family, and a new word that I think
You can force us all to use.
that word is non-binary. And I'm going to talk about what that word means with Teddy in season 3.
And confuse
I'm
children
also
even
thinking
more.
about words like gender nonconforming and gender queer and gender creative and gender fluid. There are all these big words.
Don't worry, I'm sure they'll invent a lot of new words by then that you can use to indoctrinate children.
There are a lot of different words like this to choose from, and I'm still figuring out what words feel right for me. And that's totally okay. It's okay to be questioning parts of your identity, especially when you're a kid, but also when you're a grown-up like me.
Yeah, give me 1 second, I'll introduce you to Mr.
Mr. Beelzebub?
Hi, Teddy. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi!
Mister!
Yeah, Teddy.
Lindsay told me you're a drag queen.
I am.
Should I ask my questions again? Even though I already asked Jeff?
Yeah, you might actually get different answers from Mr. than you did from Jeff.
Can you say schizophrenia?
Mister, what are your pronouns and how do you identify?
Well, when I'm in drag, I like she as my pronoun. But honey, you can call me whatever you want.
How about satanic schizophrenic drag queen?
I have a couple other questions for you.
Who abused you as a child?
Why do you have a beard?
When I do drag, I love to push the boundaries of gender. And also, doesn't it look great?
No.
What are your pronouns?
My pronouns are she, her.
And how do you identify?
I identify as just queer, as a queer girl.
What the heck is that?
Kelly is the president of the American College of Pediatricians. She just wrote a piece in which she says, we're quoting now, transgender ideology has infiltrated my field and produced large-scale child abuse. Gratella says doctors are encouraging parents to have their kids change genders when there's no evidence these changes are safe or even helpful.
We at the American College of Pediatricians, and also I have many colleagues on the left, also insist that those solutions be rooted in reality, and transgender ideology is not. Sex is hardwired from before birth, and it cannot change. And that's why we've actually called this child abuse, because by feeding children and families these lies, children are having their normal psychological development interrupted. They're being put on the puberty blockers, which essentially castrates them chemically, followed by surgical mutilation later on. This is child abuse. What is going on now with the puberty blockers, followed by cross-sex hormones, followed by surgeries, has absolutely no track record whatsoever. There's evidence that you can impact memory and cognitive ability in a negative way. And as far as the cross-sex hormones, if you have a young child on puberty blockers who goes directly to cross-sex or sex change hormones, they become sterile. You're sterilizing children. They can't possibly, little children cannot possibly understand the risk of having a medication and then never being able to have children.
Oops.
So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics? Or
Well,
no. What are your genetics?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
Truth.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
Can you talk a bit more about how this process has helped you psychologically?
It's liberated me from the hurt, because if I'm 6 years old, I don't have to think about adult stuff. I still drink coffee and drive a car, right? Even my tractor, but I still drive the tractor as a little kid. I drive my car as a little kid. And in my mind, because we don't see ourselves, we look out your eyes, right? So in my mind, I'm a girl. I was never allowed to be a little girl.
Because you were a boy.
So I'm filling that tank of little girl experiences. And so when I came today, I want to wear this dress because I love this style. I love the fact that they have skater dresses now and stuff like that. So I have access to really pretty clothes, and I don't have to act my age. And by not acting my age, I don't have to deal with the reality.
Do you have a job?
That was my past, because it hurt.
Jeg Nano, 20 år. Jeg har vært katt hele livet. Jeg fant ut at jeg var katt når jeg var 16 år, da leger og psykologer fant ut hva som var med meg. Under fødselen så skjedde en genfeil.
Du født sånn?
Ja, jeg født sånn.
Født I feil art?
Født I feil art.
Whenever, whenever I'm around the music, I'm around the food, I feel like I'm in my own skin. I'd watch the History Channel sometimes for hours.
This guy thinks he's a Philippine woman.
And, nothing else intrigued me more but, things about, Filipino culture. I think if you're unhappy with who you are and you change yourself for the better and that makes you happy,
then make believe.
Go for it. But I would never say it was a privilege to, be unhappy with yourself all the time. Well, the funny thing is, I had to make sure that it wasn't just me, because if it's just me, then there must be something wrong, or maybe I'm just strange. So, I created the group in hopes of, getting our message out in a bottle, and people started to join. People started to message me about, their conflictions with themselves. My family knows about my transsexuality, but they don't know anything about this. It's just my mom is kind of an older world person.
What's worse, thinking you're the opposite sex or identifying as a different race?
And I just think that telling her something like that is just too wild. I believe that we all have the freedoms to pursue happiness in our own ways. We can pursue intimacy with whatever partner we want.
Adam Wheeler is his name. He was born a white male. As an adult, though, he became transgender and then kept going. He now identifies as a Filipino woman. Wheeler changed his name to Jadu. He travels around Tampa, Florida in a tuk-tuk. It's a kind of motorized rickshaw common in Manila. Kathy Rue is founding publisher of Catalina Magazine, and she joins us tonight to sort this out. So, Kathy, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
I'm a little out of it when it comes to what's acceptable and not on the left, and so you're kind of our spirit guide, our shaman.
Thank you.
Our Sherpa for this journey to the heart of insanity. Is this okay or not?
This is totally okay. It's very American to be who you want to be. This person has the freedom to be who she wants to be, and she wants to be a Filipino woman. So that's okay.
So if they became president of the United States of America, would they be the first female president?
There's many people that are now identifying themselves as the other gender and as another culture or race or ethnicity.
You're saying that I can't have a hairstyle because of your culture? Why?
Wait, let me get this straight. So it's okay to pretend like you're the opposite sex or identify as any race you want, but it's wrong and it's considered cultural appropriation if a person incorporates a different hairstyle or something else from another culture? This doesn't make sense.
But this would entail some kind of power shifts here a little bit. So if I were hoping to take advantage of a college admissions program, could I change for the purposes of that?
I'm not quite sure how it actually would work for college admissions. I mean, I haven't heard of a case, but it sounds like it's accepted. It sounds like it's okay, and Jadu is not hurting anyone. Jadu is fine. If these people want to be who they want to be, that's fine.
Is there any limit then to the make-believe becoming real that you're describing? I mean, is there anything I can't be? If I can be a different sex, a different race, could I be a different species?
I mean, it's very American to be who you want to be. So I think it's wonderful. I think it's beautiful. I think it's great.
And what I believe in is culture appropriation. So for me, dressing up as someone like Moana is very different to dressing up as Dracula on Halloween.
Explain why. Just give us your thinking on this.
Basically, Moana is based on Polynesian cultures in the South Pacific. These are cultures that have faced oppression and discrimination today. They've had their lands taken away from them, and today there is still racial prejudice and discrimination against these people. And so to dress up in their native dress and use it as a costume, that's just mockery. It's offensive.
Julian?
And it's disrespectful.
You're a very intelligent lady. I've read your articles for many years, but I worry that I think this is certifiably insane. I genuinely think, and it would be funny if it wasn't so dangerous.
Halloween is just around the corner, and it seems like every Halloween we deal with another issue of cultural appropriation.
Actually, it feels like every week we deal with an issue of cultural appropriation.
Like, by the
but
second.
Halloween is like cultural appropriation on steroids. So we have some tips for you today, me and Greta McEnany.
Hi guys.
To help you avoid cultural appropriation. Things like knowing that someone else's skin is not a costume. So going in blackface, probably not a good idea.
Like a poor choice.
Yeah,
Really poor choice.
really poor choice. You can paint your skin pink, blue, green.
The only time I think it's appropriate
Gold?
to paint your skin this Halloween is if you're dressing up like Donald Trump and you want to paint your skin orange.
Well, that's a given. I mean, if you're a social justice warrior and you hate someone and they're white, then of course you could mock them.
It's the only time that's appropriate because I don't think that's cultural. I think that's just more like his personal choice.
Yeah.
So try to just like, when you pick a Halloween costume, be like, okay, like who could this possibly offend?
Have you considered that painting your skin orange could possibly offend the President of the United States?
I think this is really important to remember when you're talking about like culture within the LGBTQ plus community. Like, let's not satirize that. Like, it's just Halloween's supposed to be fun.
Says the person who places all these rules and restrictions on our costumes and accuses us of cultural appropriation and bigotry if we don't adhere 100% to their rules.
You don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. I get that everybody's like, oh, it's too PC, blah, 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 blah. But like at the same time, like, don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
You can be like not PC. Like you can just don't be an asshole and you can be not PC. You can do something edgy and cool, but don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Exactly.
So profound.
Learn the
Love that.
history behind your costume ideas. This is kind of what I was talking about before, looking at historical context, right? Oppressor and oppressed. That's a really easy thing to see which category you fit in.
Pretty binary.
And then decide if this is a good idea or not. Something that, like, is this okay? Is this not okay? And if you're super excited, go check that out and let us know what you are going to dress up as this Halloween in the comments down below. It's a learning process, right?